Yeah, no, 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 no. Yeah, 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 no, 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 no. Melanated minds with the crown restored. Asiatic truth that we cannot ignore. Honor to noble Drew Ali, we rise. Nationality reclaimed, open your eyes. Love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, the spark. No more strangers walking in the dark. Research first, let the facts ignite. Real Morse talk every week, truth over hype. This is knowledge, this is heritage, this is consciousness. Welcome to Real Morse Talk with your hostess, Prime Minister Durriyyah Bey. Hey. Yeah, no, 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 no. Yeah, no, 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 no. Shadow hour. 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 You are now tuned into Real Morse Talk. Melanated glow, crown back on the throne. Asiatic spirit, yes, we finally home. Honor noble Drew Ali, we proclaim. Nationality restored, we reclaim the name. Yeah, yeah. Love, truth, peace, let it spark that fire. Freedom, justice, lifting hearts higher. No more strangers, we know our part. Real Morse Talk, truth from the heart. Real Morse Talk, truth from the heart. Real Morse Talk, that's right. Yeah, na, 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 na. Shadow hour. Yeah, na, 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 na. Shadow hour. Yeah, na, 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 na. Shadow hour. Yeah, na, 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 na. That's it. Rise up, rise up, rise up. That's it. Rise up. This is heritage. That's it. Rise up. That's just consciousness. That's it. Rise up. That's your heritage. That's it. Rise up. Never haven't been. That's it. Rise up. This is heritage. This is consciousness with your hostess, Prime Minister Durriyyah Bey.
All right, everyone, welcome to episode 20 of Real Morse Talk. First, I always want to open up Rise and giving perfect praises to our Creator, whom I choose to call Allah, for allowing me to wake up this rising in my right frame of mind with my good common sense, life, health, and consciousness, with the ability to stay on this road, the Islamic road, the road to truth, because sometimes it's rough and sometimes it's smooth. I want to give honor to each and every one of you who found time to come on this call today as we bring in our National Grand Sheikh Tarik Bey. He's going to be talking about the unconstitutionality of the 14th Amendment. And that was a book that was written, and by Judge Leander H. Perez. And so tonight's episode is going to examine the unconstitutionality of the 14th Amendment. The purpose of this discussion is to review the historical claims, constitutional arguments, congressional actions, presidential objections, Reconstruction policies, and legal questions presented by the author in that book. And our presenter, who's going to be talking about that, who knows a lot about this discussion, a lot about the Constitution. You know him. We all know him, and we love him. He is our National Grand Sheikh Tarik Bey. He's going to be our special guest speaker on this topic today. I just want to say a few things before we bring him on. That I want people to realize that this is going to be a free exchange of ideas. Please be very respectful when you can ask questions in the chat of Taj. Stick to the subject matter because it's going to be about the unconstitutionality of the 14th Amendment. Any other question that you might want to have about other things, is not this platform to do that. The opinions and conclusions discussed in this presentation are by the author, the National Grand Sheikh Tarik Bey, and myself, as the purpose is for educational information or examining this historical document, because there's still a lot of arguments out there about the 14th Amendment, whether it's constitutional, whether it's not. I'm going to come later in the broadcast and talk about what the Prophet Noble Ali said about the 14th Amendment. And what I say about the whole Constitution, that's my opinion, say that it's all de facto, with the de facto government who doesn't follow any laws or principles that they put in place. But we're going to enjoy our Grand Sheikh tonight as he comes on and talk about that. I'm going to bring him on to the stage now and give much honor to our National Grand Sheikh, Tarik Bey. Islam, National Grand Sheikh Islam, Islamism. I think you have to unmute yourself, Taj, because I have already unmuted you. So I think
All
you
right.
need to. There
Islam, can you
you
hear me?
are. Yes, I can, Grand Sheik. So it's always a pleasure to have you on, you know, a call. It's always a pleasure to have you on a call. And we've been discussing this for a while, and you've been wanting to do this particular segment on the unconstitutionality of the 14th Amendment.
Yes.
And this was an argument that the judge, so the judge, that the book that we're coming from, this was by Judge Leander H. Perez.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yes. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring you on to the topic, and, for this discussion for everyone to listen in. And I have to say again, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat, and I'll make sure the Grand Sheik is able to get them and we'll answer them. But I need you to be respectful because everyone has their opinion, and I need you to stick to the topic, the subject matter on which we're speaking of today. And you'll hear us talk about different things about the 14th Amendment, in my opinion, what Taj had to say about the 14th Amendment, what Judge Perez had to say about the 14th Amendment, what the Prophet had to say about the 14th Amendment, and also for me, how the 14th Amendment has helped in circumstances where people's rights are being denied. So we're going to go ahead and bring the
Yes.
Grand Sheik on. And I'm going to go ahead and give it to you, Grand Sheik. I'm going to put it all
Islam,
to you. It's fine, Grand Sheik. Speak good and loud for us to be able to enjoy you
can
today.
you hear me? Well,
I am a little hard of hearing, so I can, but everyone else probably
uh,
can hear you pretty well. So I'm going to,
now,
uh,
Islam,
hold on, Grand Sheik. Hold on. I want to make sure that it's, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. Make sure that it's on you. Uh, all right, there we are, Grand Sheik.
Islam, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you
All right.
well.
What I would one Thank you for maintaining the integrity of study for the people. And one of the things that all nationals and citizens need to be aware of in any argument, our opinions may lean one way or another. But when you're standing on Constitution, those personal opinions or leanings are not relevant. What you go by is the record. Now, everyone who is listening to the show, write this down right now so that we can end arguments, because issues that's presented before the people at North America, both the nationals, who are essentially the Aboriginal people of the land, and the citizens that may be classified from A1 to A19, that would be under the Naturalization Act, which was modified in 1870. They have certain rights relative to legislation, but not necessarily conditional or permanent rights. That must be understood. Now, so we want to, for all the listeners, because Moorish Americans are in accord with our divine constitution and bylaw and the divine warning by the prophet Noble Drali for the nations, and that's plural. Write this down. Res judicata. One, that's res judicata, and stare decisis. So when people are arguing about any law relative to constitutional principle, their opinion has no weight unless it can be backed up with stare decisis. Stare decisis is established law. So is res judicata. If it's not stare decisis, the argument is already over. Now, for those of you, and particularly Moorish Americans who are nationalized, that are operating in harmony with the law of the land, supreme law of the land, knows already that in order to enforce the Constitution, you must stand in res judicata or stare decisis. And that means the argument is over. Opinions can be had in personal conversation, but in the standing of law, stare decisis stands, and all emotional or personal arguments or attitudes are set aside. Now, one of the things that we want to make sure that all the listeners have comprehension sharing with us tonight, don't get caught up in my opinion or your opinion. Let's deal with the law. If it is res judicata, or if it is stare decisis, it stands as law and there's no dispute, and no judge, no person, no administrative clerk calling himself or herself a judge, no person in political office, etc., can counter that, and there can be no legislation that counters it. That means it stands no longer challenged. Now, if there's an action initiated by any political body that counters that which is a stare decisis, they're exercising what is known as misprision of treason. Now, let's make this very clear. In accord with the Constitution for the United States of America, and as you all know, all Moorish Americans being part and parcel of the original fundamental government, the Republic, must live the life accordingly and act accordingly and deal accordingly. So among those, whether they're nationals or whether they're citizens, there is no dispute with res judicata or stare decisis. It has been held, because it's established in law, that the 14th Amendment and all proceedings that were done in the cause of 14th Amendment are in fact color of law and remain color of law. There is no legislation that can take place after the fact that make non-law the law, no matter how it's been used or no matter how it's been manipulated by politicians to garner votes from people or to play games with the rights of the people. Rights cannot be removed. Privileges can be removed. Anything written under the 14th Amendment, if it's removed, it's because it was never law. This is why it's very important for Moors, and particularly anyone who's in harmony with constitutional principle, to understand those facts. Now, let's deal with certain fundamental principles that all know and that no one can dispute. And we'll go to the principles of, say, joint resolutions or et cetera, things that are presented in the House of Representatives for law to be passed. One of the things that must be kept in mind, and you write this down, that since 1862, after they murdered Abraham Lincoln, that activity, which is not usually taught to the people about the motivations of the political order at that time, almost all legislation that was done after 1866, and as you already know, there was a major riot at North America that same year, 1866. And that, after the overthrow of the Republic and the corrupt politicians and people who they assigned to maintain the fraud of color of law, etc., have been promoting the 14th Amendment to deceive the people of the land in order to hide the corruption of the politicians. Because remember, anything that's color of law creates no office, creates no right, creates no liberties, and can bestow no obligation nor jurisdictional authority for or upon anyone. All legislation, alleged legislation created in color, remains in color. That must be understood. So write this down: color of law, color of office, color of authority, and that must be comprehended by everyone while we're talking. Now, in order for any amendment to become law, you already know that two-thirds of the houses or the republic states or commonwealth, and we're not talking about states of. When you're talking about states of, that is an unconstitutional venue. It must be a republic, and you have the few states that are commonwealth, and those are the legitimate operatives that are operating on constitutional law. Outside of those venues, the politicians have been fooling the people and playing with people's lives in order to maintain their corruption. Keep this in mind. The people who don't understand the geopolitics are looking at the argument of rights given under the so-called 14th Amendment, when no such thing ever took place, can't take place, because if it's color of law, it cannot produce an office, it cannot produce a law, no matter how many generations it's exercised. Now, every order or every resolution, right, or vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and the House of Representatives may be necessary, except on a question of adjournment only, right? Shall be presented to the President for the United States, and before the President shall, before the issue or the alleged presentment can take place or take effect, shall be approved by the President for the United States, or being disapproved, etc., by he or she, whoever's holding that office, and shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and House of Representatives, according to the rules and limitations provided for in the case of a bill. That's how laws are passed. And according to the record and the congressional record, and we have the list of all the states. I won't go through all of them, but what we're doing, we're establishing the rules. These are the votes of all the states. Now, the fact remains and has never changed that the 14th Amendment has never been ratified and never stood as law, but because of the corruption, they have been using it to manipulate people ever since that time, and even up to this very day, that the argument exists when the argument was already settled, etc., over a century ago. And you cannot make it law. 14th Amendment is not law, was never ratified, and can never be law. And any proceedings or color of activities that was done under the 14th Amendment, etc., remains a fraud. And as a matter of fact, in accord with Constitution law, the fact that any politicians are still using it in order to promote any agenda that they have are actually exercising in a state of misprision of treason. For the moment, I yield the floor. I can't hear you, Prime Minister.
All right, Grand Sheik. All right, so in reference to the 14th Amendment that we're saying has never been ratified, in that argument from this particular book, we do have it here at circle7publishing.com. So if you all are interested in purchasing that book, you can get it from circle7publishing.com. And because it's not really available a lot of places, I don't know, but we do have it here. And so the argument that about the 14th Amendment, so I wanted to go into what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali had to say about the 14th Amendment, and me personally about the 14th Amendment too. So let's go to y'all. Y'all know I keep my notes. I told y'all to keep it in order for me. I have to keep notes. Now you heard Ty say get that pen and paper out, right? Because that's the way you do things. You have to get that pen and paper out. And I want to let me see, I'm going to fix this where Taj and I are on the screen together. So let me side by side. Let's see if that takes. Still be messing with this. I'm going to add him to the stage. There we go. All right, Grand Sheik. So this comes from the Divine Warning by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And I just want to summarize it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to summarize what I felt that the Prophet was saying about the 14th Amendment. So we know the Prophet said, so he starts with the word, in this section that I'm coming from, he starts with the word Negro, because a lot of the 14th Amendment has to do with citizenship, nationality, origin, things of that we really don't, the Europeans never intended to give us anything in the first place. And we know that the Constitution was stolen because it's part of the Articles of Confederation, also was a document that was stolen from the indigenous people, where they had the Indigenous People Treaty, and they used that to help them create the Constitution for those who are historically sound on the Constitution. But when the 14th Amendment came, so this is what the Prophet says to us. I'm summarizing what he says. The passage argues that terms such as Negro and colored are not true national identities, but labels that describe physical appearance or social classifications rather than a people's ancestry, nationality, or heritage. It teaches that every individual should identify themselves by their national name of their forefathers and foremothers ancestry, because nationality is viewed as a fundamental part of identity and recognition among the nations of the world. Everyone is known by nationality, they're known by birthrights, they're known, except for us. We're the only people that were not being recognized as the individuals who had any type of historical event. Only thing they wanted us to think about is that our history started either with the Civil War or with slavery, and that's an untruth. So the prophet was clearing up that. So he said the passage. So I said the further contends that if all people were already guaranteed freedom, and that's when the prophet's talking about if all men are created equal and free. And I believe whoever typed it up for him misquoted it because that came from the Declaration of Independence, not the Constitution. But the Declaration of Independence declared that every man should be equal and free. Right. So the prophet is saying if that was the case coming from the Declaration of Independence and equally under the Constitution as well, then the 14th and 15th Amendments were unnecessary for securing the rights of the people. According to the prophet's viewpoint, the real solution is for the people to reclaim their national identity and heritage rather than rely on classification imposed by others. Also, the prophet was saying that people are recognized by true identity and living according to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and society can achieve harmony, prosperity, and unity. Also, he was warning us that failure to do these things that he has stated, failure to do this will lead to social, moral, and national decline, while adherence to these will also contribute to, if we do them, will contribute to a much better society for our people. You know, criticism of racial labels such as Negro and colored, constitutional freedom and equality, the role of the 14th and 15th Amendments, self-determination, civic recognition, for us. So as a people, we need to honor our ancestral identity and heritage in order to fulfill our exercise of our real rights. So in other words, even if the Declaration of Human Rights or even if the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, if none of these documents even were ever written, I'm getting what the prophet is saying, that we still should be carrying these things out. We should be identifying to who we are, because when you take away who you are, then there's no way to identify who you are. And then you find yourself assimilating and socializing to other people's cultures and identity, and you're still lost. You're still a lost people because you don't know, you can't identify with yourself. So the prophet was letting us know that these documentations, whether they're there or not, we still have to continue to recognize who we are. And so I wanted to bring that. That was what I summarized that the prophet said when he was talking about those amendments. And that was in a divine warning that he was warning everybody, not just us. He was warning the whole entire world. And he was letting us know that if Italians, Japanese, Chinese, Arabians, Hindus, all of these people are forced to proclaim their free national status and name, why aren't we being forced to do that as well? Why is it that we as a people are not being forced to proclaim something that's so important? And so how do you give this to other people, but you take it away from us? And so the prophet was really trying to wake our eyes up to see that we as a people have to get back to the root of everything. We have to get back to making sure that we are following the laws. And even if the Constitution was never written for us, and I always say this, because I don't have any proof. I was not there. I don't have any proof who was sitting in that room or whatever when the Constitution was written. So that's not my argument. But the thing is that even if that be the case, we had to learn how to enforce the Constitution, even if you were not there. The things that were put in there was for a civilized society. But also we know that the government which we put it in place is a de facto government. So when you're fighting against a government who's already crooked in the first place, and you're striving to enforce these laws that were put in place to make sure that everyone in society could live in harmony, what happens to us at that point, Taj? And I'll yield the floor back to you.
Islam.
Islam.
These are things that must be understood. See, one of the problems that is very clear, Prime Minister, is because most of the people are reacting of how they feel about it as opposed to knowing about it. So I'm going to go to the record. See, that's why you got to go to the record, because the record is the argument, not what people feel about it. Number one, when you're dealing with constitutional principle, because keep in mind, they need to know, write this down to everyone, because this will be points of reference so that you can be competent in any position that you may have concerning what is called de jure law, which is mean res judicata or stare decisis, and or de facto, which is fraud, also known as colored law, colored of office, color of authority. So a colored law is created.
Oh, what happened? I apologize, Sarge. Hold on a second.
It's very important for people to know why the corruptors or the corrupt politicians presented the 14th Amendment, and it has much to do with the motivation of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. That's a study in itself. The other thing that all the listeners should do for research is the Naturalization Act, and also research the Whittemore Convention held at Philadelphia 1854, and a reference point will be Horace Greeley. And also the modification of the Naturalization Act 1870. You have to know what took place actually in order to have legitimate position in any argument. So I'm giving you some background so that anyone that's really trying to solve the problems with the people relative to preserving their rights, etc. Because remember, rights are not given. They already exist. Privileges are given and can be taken away. Things that are legislated, etc., in relationship to a political venue can be removed. Things that are constitutional cannot be removed by people who are in office. This is why it's very important for people to know what is the basis upon which law is established de jure, and what is presented falsely under a de facto operation, which is what has created these arguments anyway in the first place. So let me go over a few notes relative to the proposed amendment referred to the 14th Amendment for the record, to show for the record that it's not law. Now, pretermitting the effectiveness of that said resolution as above 15 states out of the then, which were 37 states at that time, keep that in mind, of the Union, rejected the proposed 14th Amendment between the date of its submission to the states by the Secretary of State on June the 16th of 1866 and March 24th of 1868, and thereby further nullifying that said resolution and making it impossible for its ratification by the constitutionality which is required by law to establish any resolution as law. And as the record shows, North Carolina, Senate Journal, 1866, 1867, page 92 and 93. 14 Statute at Large, page 358, etc. In the Senate Journal, which is the 39th Congress, first session, page 563, and the House Journal, page 889. Now, so the resolution must be, keep this in mind, must be passed by 3/4. So that's 3/4, right, of the such states, as shown by the rejections thereof by the legislatures of the following state. Texas rejected the 14th Amendment on October the 27th, 1866. Georgia rejected the 14th Amendment on November the 9th, 1866. Florida rejected the 14th Amendment on December the 6th, 1866. Alabama rejected the 14th Amendment on December the 7th, 1866. North Carolina rejected the 14th Amendment on December the 14th, 1866. Arkansas rejected the 14th Amendment on December the 17th, 1866. South Carolina rejected the 14th Amendment on December the 20th, 1866. Kentucky rejected the 14th Amendment on January the 8th, 1867. Virginia rejected the 14th Amendment on January the 9th, 1867. Louisiana rejected the 14th Amendment on February the 6th, 1867. Delaware rejected the 14th Amendment on February the 7th, 1867. Maryland rejected the 14th Amendment on March 23rd, 1867. Mississippi rejected the 14th Amendment on January the 31st, 1867. Ohio rejected the 14th Amendment on January the 15th, 1867. New Jersey rejected the 14th Amendment on March the 24th, 1868. And there is no question that the southern states which rejected the 14th Amendment had legally and lawfully constituted the government, i.e., or the republic, and was fully recognized by the federal government, and they were functioning as member states of the Union at the time of their rejections. And so the House Journals, 1866, etc., and you can find it in the public record, etc. Now, keep in mind, whenever there's an argument relative to what law is and law is not relative to the Constitution, you're supposed to go to the record, not to emotions. And so I just read to you from the record. It is no dispute that is not law, never was law, can never be law, and anything that they attach to it is never law. Now, this also must be understood. So when you're dealing with the timeline, you got to remember that the Constitution for the United States was adopted from Muslim law, from the Aboriginal indigenous people of the land being the nationals. They didn't write it, they adopted it. That's what the record shows, because they adopted principles that already existed. Now, keep in mind, when you're dealing with the military records and the military journals and the House resolutions, that before that Constitution for the United States was adopted, keep in mind, it was adopted after the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, etc., between Morocco and the United States, etc. And then you're dealing with 1788, 1786, 1787, 1788, etc. And you can check the House journals, etc., those 3-year cycles. And during that particular time, and at that particular time, Arthur St. Clair was the president acting for the United States, etc., for the Republic, etc. Now, this is again why people must understand why the corruptors have been teaching the people falsely that George Washington was the first president for the Republic when they're lying. John Hanson was the first. George Washington was the ninth. And with the corruption, they did that to hide the truth of the record. That's why I'm reading some of the record to you directly there. And look up Arthur St. Clair, because that's when they adopted from the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, they adopted the Constitution for the United States. So all activities outside of that are not law, cannot be law, creates no office, creates no authority, creates no law, and gives no rights. There's no right to give, etc. And this is why it's important for people to understand when you're dealing with principles of nationality, or what you would call the beneficiaries of the constitutional contract, it is important for people to understand the Constitution for the United States, and particularly in relationship to the diversity of nationals and citizens that would be dealt with at Article 3, Section 2. That's dealing with diversity. And so when those of you who have nationality cards are to be taught the truth about what that nationality card is, it reestablishes the diversity that was hidden. The Christian Black codes known as Codes Noir that was adopted from the Codes Noir of 1620 and adopted into the corporate states by the corrupt politicians after they closed the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands. That's the fraud of what they call later, loosely in history, in its incomplete form, they refer to as the Freedmen's Bureau. So they set up that fraud since then, and they set up what is known as a nom de guerre system in order to institutionalize slavery. And that's where a Negro Act and the Black codes and such instruments were created under a color of law, created under the 14th Amendment in order to remove the Aboriginal people from protected law. That's what the Black codes are. That's what the Negro, Black, and Colored serves as an act of war. The nationalization, because keep this in mind, because the Constitution is a contract, and it's a contract also by descendancy. It's a political contract. So in order for someone to be protected by law, they must be identified. And since the law, i.e. for the land, derived from Muslim law, and the Prater Obama exposed that also. And it was presented even on the record from the Anasazi Confederation, etc., of Moors, which they'll call the Iroquois, but it's Anasazi, etc. Now, when you're dealing with Article 6, Article 3 for the Constitution, read it and study it, and read Article 6. And all contracts, all debts and contracts or engagements, etc., that's dealing with treaties, etc., made before the adoption of that Constitution are binding against the United States, which was subordinate under this Constitution as under the Articles of Confederation. And all treaties made or which shall be made shall be the supreme law of the land. So when you're talking Constitution, you're talking the treaties, etc., and you're talking the Articles of Confederation, etc. And this is what people need to understand. It's not just that document. It includes all treaties, etc. And so when they trick the people into adopting the Black codes, that takes them out of the law, because there was no such people existed that created any law that had any history. It was a branding nom de guerre system created by slaveholders, etc., to disinherit the actual people of the land so they could maintain the corruption of their own misprision of treason, and this had much to do with the murder of Lincoln in his actual murder, in his actual motive. And so people must know by law that after the murder of Abraham Lincoln, the corrupt politicians, being members of the Circle Church and Chancery, operated from Fleet Street, England, also known as the British Accredited Registry, known with its branch operating at North America, not in North America, and is not North America, operating on the land at North America, known as the British Accredited Registry, also known as the Bar Association, set up their private criminal activity known as the U.S. democracy to overthrow the republic. That was the motive of the murder of Lincoln. All operations after that is fraud and misprision of treason. And the 14th Amendment was put in place to cover up that real history and to maintain institutionalized forced servitude and peonage, known commonly as slavery, since Abraham Lincoln. In accord with the law of the land, Abraham Lincoln was the last, I repeat, Abraham Lincoln was the last lawful president operating on the land by Constitution law, etc., on behalf of the Republic Constitution. All operatives thereafter have been operating in a state of misprision of treason. The 14th and 15th Amendment was put in place in order to maintain the corruption and the theft ever since. The necessity of curing it is that the history must be retaught, the truth of the numerality, the numerical position of the praetors of the order of the republic, also known as the presidents, etc., must be revealed to the people from John Hanson even up to George Washington, and the people must know that the reason you have not been taught that history prior to George Washington is to maintain the fraud which was set up thereafter. Now, Noble Drew Ali, being descendant of the ancient Canaanite Moabites and people of the land, knows and was teaching the Moors that in order to be a beneficiary, you must be a party to the contract. And that contract, known as the Constitution for the United States, adopted from the Honesty Confederation of Moors, etc. If you are not of Moabite, Moorish blood, etc., you have no claim under that right. And this has much to do with even many Europeans who have been trying to restore the Constitution, as you hear them saying in these late years, Nasara and Gesara, and they're talking about restoring the republic, particularly after the middle class has been dissolved because of the corruption of the Khazarian mafia, which took over the republic, and it actually have been actually owning the United States Corporation Company and teaching the people fraudulently that the United States was the country when it's actually a private corporation run from Davos, Switzerland to this very day. And the corporate papers for that corporation that has been personating as the country, etc., which we've shared with you over the years, is known by sheiks, by Masons, by Eastern Stars, by Knights Templars, by Knights of Malta, which most presidents are Knights of Malta, by Knights of Columbus, etc., and by all of the politicians, etc., and is known commonly around the world as part of that body of information known as and referred to as the Great Seal, i.e. Order of Knowledge of the Ancient World, etc., of the Ancient Arabic Order, etc., etc., etc. And they take an oath to the popes of Rome not to reveal the secrets, and is known loosely as the so-called Masonic secrets, etc. And that great seal that you see on the back of the note, with the eye of Jove above it, separated, is the etc. Insignia of the ancient Moabite Canaanite nation. Those things must be told to you. Now, when Noble Ali gave these people their nationality card, that brought them back into the constitutional fold of government. In order to enforce it, you need to know the history, some of which I've just shared with you. I release the floor.
All right, Grand Sheik. So I'm going to go over some research that I did on the 14th Amendment, and then I'm going to have you go ahead and break it down about it, because like I had said earlier in the broadcast that it was some positive things, and I know that I fought a lot of cases, and I've used that 14th Amendment to get more, situated in certain incidents. So I'm just going to, what the 14th Amendment is supposed to be about, and then you'll have you analyze it, okay?
Mhm.
So the 14th Amendment, what I had was ratified July 9th, 1868, during the Reconstruction era following the Civil War. It was one of the most significant amendments in American constitutional history because it addressed citizenship, due process, and equal protection under the law. Section 1, the one that's most commonly discussed, that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. It also provides due process of law, equal protection of the laws, and privileges or immunities of citizens. The 14th Amendment was largely a response to the end of slavery following the Civil War, the Supreme Court decision of Dred Scott versus Stanford, questions regarding citizenship and civil rights of formerly enslaved people. And one of the main things is the Dred Scott decision had held that individuals of African descent could never be citizens of the United States under the court's interpretation at that time. The 14th Amendment largely addressed citizenship. Arguments that have been put on the floor to support the 14th Amendment have been protected newly free people, established national citizenship, prevented states from denying basic civil rights, and created constitutional protection against unequal treatment. Of course, we know later on that a lot of the civil rights movements, and I support civil rights movements, fought with the 14th Amendment. Okay. Now, some of the arguments that challenge the amendment, now I'm going into arguments. First, I did supporting, is that some critics, including Judge Leander H. Perez, is what we're discussing, his book, The Unconstitutionality of the 14th Amendment, argued that Southern states were denied full representation in Congress during Reconstruction. Ratification procedures violated Article 5. Certain states were compelled to ratify the amendment as a condition for readmission to Congress. All right, and these were arguments. Now, here's how courts have viewed this issue. Some courts have viewed this issue. Despite these challenges, the United States government, federal courts, and the Supreme Court have consistently recognized the 14th Amendment as valid and enforceable for more than 150 years. Even though we're talking about that it's unconstitutional, we're talking about what's going on. Major Supreme Court decisions involving the 14th Amendment has been civil rights, equal protection, school desegregation, voting rights, and due process. They have all relied on the 15th Amendment and that connection to Dred Scott decision, because we know with Dred Scott that not only, first of all, a lot of people don't even know that Dred Scott, that wasn't even his name. We know that when his brother passed away, he took on his brother's name. For those who do history, I'm not sure how many, I don't want to confuse anyone, but the history is that Dred Scott, that was not his name at birth. But we know that he took on another name thinking that would help him. But realistically, his whole denial and not realizing that what was denying him was that because he was still considered a slave or property. And this is why he was still fighting for freedom, not really understanding that the way he could get his freedom was to identify who he was nationally. But because he wasn't conscious of that at the time, this is where the 14th Amendment was coming into fight. But also we know that the argument that Taney made was that no one of African descent could ever be considered a citizen. And he made that statement saying that making sure they're trying to suppress the thoughts of the people that they would never have citizenship, not realizing that you're already a citizen in your own land in the first place. You are the natural, real citizens here in this North American territory. You are the citizen. Before, if you get an old dictionary, it'll tell you that the original citizens, the original so-called American citizens, are the copper-complected people that were here before the Europeans came and invaded this territory. So, with that, what I've just said and this information that I brought upon the arguments challenging the amendment, how courts viewed it, how supporting arguments and challenging of the 14th Amendment, and how the different sections and how it has helped Ajax in some sense, even though it's considered unconstitutional, and they're saying that they still, no matter what, for 150 years, whether we agree or disagree on the constitutionality, that has helped support people for over 150 years. And I'll yield your thoughts back to you on the floor.
Now, this is where Noble Drew Ali comes in, because he knows that they've been using the 14th Amendment to make our people fool our people that they were giving rights when they have no authority to give or to take rights. That's why it's important to understand the law. And one of the things that they've been doing, they would allow people to have what you call minor wins to encourage us to continue to use it as a remedy when it really wasn't a remedy. Now, and this is also, I want you all to pay attention to this. This is very important. And in the future, we're going to go over this again, because we're going to make sure that you have all the information you need so that we can fix this problem, because we shouldn't even be arguing this anymore, because the argument was settled. It is already stare decisis. Now,
I just want to interject. The argument is not with us. We're not arguing.
No. We're talking in general.
Right. I just wanted to.
No, it's not us. We're not talking about us.
Right.
The argument about the 14th Amendment was already settled. It's not law. Anything coming from it is not law. It doesn't mean that they haven't been using it to continue to fool the people. It's like, this is what they've been doing. They've been encouraging us to use it to make us think it's real. But if you notice, nothing really serious you would win. They would let us pass on small minor things like bills of attainder arguments, like what you call traffic tickets and stuff like that, which is really a bill of attainder, which is unconstitutional. Right? But they know that most of our people don't know that traffic tickets is really human trafficking, and it's a bill of attainder, and traffic tickets are unconstitutional no matter what corporate state they're coming from. Now, this is very important for everybody to write this down. The Clearfield Doctrine. We're going to deal in the future on that, because we're going to because the Clearfield Doctrine is still dealing with the 14th Amendment issue, but it's not talking about the 14th Amendment issue directly. The Clearfield Doctrine in Clearfield, Pennsylvania, there was a check that was stolen, the $24 check that was stolen in Clearfield, Pennsylvania. And I'll give you a synopsis. The presenters for the bank that was being sued by the United States Corporation Company, I repeat, United States Corporation Company, I repeat, sued by the United States Corporation Company, who has been perpetrating since 1862 that they're the country, lost the case. Why? Because it's a private corporation run from Davos, Switzerland, and has been fronted as the country since 1862 under the 14th Amendment. And they've been, maintaining slavery on the people. And they are actually an impersonating government, and the people don't know it. This is why Drew Ali told us what? They're living off your virtues. But he knew that unless we studied the history, we wouldn't understand what that really meant. What it means is that they're de facto. That's what de facto means. De facto means that the entire platform government that are operating on the land are what? Faking as government. That's the Clearfield Doctrine, relative to anyone that wants to study law, even though it's not talking about the 14th Amendment directly, it's talking indirectly. And I'm going to go to a section of that in order to show it to you. The other thing that you need to pay attention to is, and this is another reason they murdered Lincoln. Now they will always promote the Dred Scott case to keep us diverted so that we can keep running to the argument of the 14th Amendment, but they avoid the William Dungy case, which was just before the Lincoln case. And what was the argument before the court? Based on the very reason they even did what? Why Dred Scott was declared by law plaintiff in error.
Yes, so, and also in the
he was declared plaintiff. That was the ruling, plaintiff in error. Let's talk this. We're just talking the record. Now, the case that took place the same period of time just before the Dred Scott case was the William Dungy case. Now, what was the issue before the court? The issue before the court that William Dungy was not black or Negro. He was a Moor, and he won the case. And that was one of the last cases that was run or that was hit behind the court. And this is another reason they murdered Lincoln. And guess who his lawyer was? Abraham Lincoln. Mm-hmm. Now, people need to know this. All Moorish Americans know this. All those who really studied under Noble Drew Ali know this. All them adepts know this. And when you really study the history and the motive of Noble Drew Ali bringing our people back into the constitutional fold of government, you'll also recognize some of the things that took place later on that is referred to by Noble Drew Ali as the Great Sellout. Because these things are supposed to be known by all Moorish Americans because you got a nationality card, because the ruling goes before the Dred Scott case, William Dungy case, led by and litigated by Abraham Lincoln. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of it, y'all, so that y'all can refer to it, etc. And excuse me. This is a case, and it's called the Black Laws.
I apologize, Taj. Can you get back in the camera?
Yes. Hold on.
Oh, no, I was just letting you know.
Give them the reference.
No, I was just letting you know that you were out of.
Yes. But I'm looking at the other computer.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Now, this is 1855, right? The Dred Scott case, 1857. Yes. You see it? Right in succession, right? And so what was the issue? The issue was a slander case because black is a pejorative, and it was a slander, and the nom de guerre systems or the branding system was used to steal people's estate. They call you black or Negro, and if you didn't rebut it, they could run you off your land, steal your property, steal your estate, and run you out. And they've been doing it. This is why generations ago, and a lot of the youth now, and even some of the adults, because they don't have the real history, although they heard about it, they didn't know the real motive, that when years ago, if you called our people black, you had a fight. But today they think it's an identity. No, it's because it was set up to steal your estate. And the William Dungy case under 1855 dealt with that. And Abraham Lincoln, being a lawyer in Illinois, i.e. beat that case, etc., against a European named William Spencer, etc. And people need to study that case because the argument was settled over and over again. It's not even confusing. Right. And this is the reason why people who really know the law would criticize so-called Negro black leaders that would deal with civil rights arguments, knowing that the civil rights clauses were done under the 14th Amendment to fool the people, to encourage them to think that they were given rights when they really didn't have rights, which is why the politicians have been playing with the civil rights and the voting rights year after year, give and take, give them a piece of pie, take it back, give them a piece of pie, take it back, because it was never law. And the only way the law can apply is to nationals, free nationals and citizens, and by identity, and you must be a party to the matter by descendancy through corporate operations relative to the birthright of those forefathers who were part and parcel of the treaties and the Constitution. That's the law of the land. I yield the floor.
All right, Grand Sheik. And so, and again, what I was stating, with this, because yes, we know about the William Dungy case. We know that, that Abraham Lincoln fought that case for him, and he won it because his brother-in-law called him a Negro and he sued him for slander. And, to me, that's one of the most powerful cases that should let us know that our identity with our free national status is important. Because you see, he was considered of Persian descent. And, but he was called a nigger and he didn't like it. And so called a Negro and he didn't like it. And he was able to fight the court and win that. Because the bottom line is it was not identification, and so he was misclassified in the first place.
That's what the nom de guerre is.
Yes.
Now, and this, let me just read just some of Lincoln's statements on the court, on the floor.
All right, go ahead, Grant.
This is Abraham Lincoln. This was won the case. Abraham Lincoln on behalf of William Dungy, who was called a Negro and a black, slander. That's what the case was all about. Mm-hmm. My client is not a Negro, though it is a crime to be a Negro. It is not a crime to be born with a black skin, but my client is not a Negro. His skin may not be as white as ours, but I say he is not a Negro, though he may be a Moor. Abraham Lincoln. And this is the Judge Davis responding to Abraham Lincoln on the floor of the court. Mr. Lincoln, that was Judge Davis interrupting Lincoln, and he was smirking with a smile. You mean he's a Moor, M-O-O-R, not Moore, M-O-O-R-E, who happened to be one of the lawyers that were there. Well, Your Honor, this is Lincoln back to Judge Davis. Well, Your Honor, Moore, M-O-O-O-R, not Clifton H. Moore, replied Mr. Lincoln with a sweep of his long arm toward the table where Moore and I sat. I say my client may be a Moore, M-O-O-O-R, M-O-O-R, but he is not a Negro, Abraham Lincoln. And by the account, etc. of the court that won the case, and at that time, and you can calculate it to today's finance, the suit was for $1,000 at that time, and that and based on this period of time, that would be in the millions. Now, this is the legal note. Analysis on the status and estate and ancillary supports. The reader, researcher, or scholar is advised to review the foregoing synopsis of the William Dungy slander case of 1855 with keen consideration about the realities and facts that in law and in legal process, one's status also determines one's standing in relationship to one's estate. And thus, in this case, referring to the William Dungy case, the spurious tags, brands, and nom de guerre such as black and Negro being pejorative and status compromising nom de guerre and misnomers had, can, and will create serious, debilitating social and economic repercussions in relationship to William Dungy's estate, such as damaged reputation would place all of his present and future hereditaments at risk and subject to his cheat. There we go. I yield the floor.
All right, Grand Sheik. And so I want to put some questions out to the audience at this time, and you can respond in the chat, and we'll read your responses. So we're going to just slow the tone down just a little bit, and we're going to put some questions. So my questions for the audience is, did Reconstruction follow constitutional procedures? That's the first question. The second question, do you believe that the 14th Amendment was properly ratified, yes or no, by the information that Grand Sheik just gave us, from the reading that we both just did? Number 3, what role should federal governments play in protecting individual groups' rights? If the 14th Amendment was never ratified, and we know that we have rights, but they're always being violated, and this is a government that's, it's not even a real government, it's de facto. So should the government actually portray in protecting your rights, or should we be protecting our own rights? And how did the 14th Amendment change the relationship between citizens, states, and the federal government? And my last question is, why was the amendment remains central to constitutional debates for more than 150 years? And that question, to clarify, I was typing really quickly, is why do you think that if it's unconstitutional, why have they been moving it forward anyway for 150 years? So we'll go ahead and try to get some of those questions answered, and then respond back and forth to Grand Sheik. All right, so we'll slow it down just a little bit for that, and give a few minutes to put things in there. So Tosh, with some of those questions that I put in there,
yes, those questions are valid questions, and the point of it is, when you go to the record, the questions were already answered. The deal of it is that the leadership, most of them were compromised and were encouraged to promote the 14th Amendment under the guise of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. That has been the fraud that Noble Drew Ali referred to in the divine warning. And that's why he warned you, so he gave you timeline. He says, since that Constitution has not been changed, you see the point? In other words, if it ain't been changed, because it couldn't be changed. Why? Because there was no constitutional convention after George Washington, and anything they said after that is a lie. It's de facto. So Noble Drew Ali brought the cure. Once you understand the law, once you understand the record, as I just read it, you understand what the Moorish movement is about. It ain't about opinion. It's not even about how we feel about it. He reestablished the law. The problem of it is the people didn't recognize it. So what he did a divine constitution and bylaws, and in Act 1, he charged the Grand Sheiks and the Sheikesses, etc., for the enforcement. They didn't have to establish the law. They need to make the people aware of it. I just made you aware of it.
Yes,
that's why they were put, the assistant Grand Sheiks, the chairmen, the moderators, the sheiks, the Grand Sheiks, and all people in government were put in power and place because they're a fiduciary position. And they were supposed to tell you what I just now told you. The argument is over. There is no argument. You have to be a party by descendancy to the constitutions and treaties. And what was the Constitution and treaty? Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1787. Adoption and the Convention, 1788. George Washington solidifying the corporate states, but also promoting the fraud thereafter, 1789. And so they hid the history of Arthur St. Clair that superseded George Washington that would have exposed this information. Noble Drew Ali set up the old Canaanite temple with the charge of the sheiks, the moderator, and the chairman to expose this information to the people and to set up schools in order that it would be dispensed, which is why he said every temple must, didn't say maybe, have a school, because he knew that the praetors of the corporation were, long as they kept their churches and schools open, would not expose the real history. So the Moorish Divine and National Movement was set up in order to do that. Drew Ali brought the cure. I just gave you some of the information, and it's the record. It's not my opinion, not how we feel, not what you think, not what you believe. Law ain't got nothing to do with belief. Law is the established land of organized civilization operating on the land. I just read stare decisis. Argument's over. There is no argument. If you're under the black codes, you have no rights. If you claim to be Negro, black, and colored, you have no rights, not because they're not available to you, because the pedigree is where the birthright is. If you ain't more, you can't claim it. And Europeans who claim to be white lost their birthright. That's the Whittemore Convention, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And so they've been doing that Mummers Parade as a ritual of the fall of the Moors, and they would assemble at 6th and Moore Street every year and march west under Horace Greeley, and they would stop at the battleground where they built the city hall, with Lafayette and George Washington standing in front of the Masonic Lodge, gripping hands, etc., in brass, etc. And for years, they would take tours and take them to the Moorish room as the first lesson, etc., open to the public. And about 15 years ago, they changed the Moorish room to the Oriental room so the people wouldn't know the real history. Because if you're not, i.e., a direct descendant, etc., of what they call the ministers plenipotentiary in treaty with the Moors, and that would be Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, etc. Those were the ministers plenipotentiary. It's in the record. And if you can't show descendancy and you can't be calling yourself light-skinned orange people, black people, or white people, etc. Because if you ain't descendant under the contracts and treaties, you have no claim of right. There is no argument. It's not whether it's over or not. It was already settled. It's stare decisis. I just read you the case. Anything coming from the 14th Amendment or under the 14th Amendment or promoted under the 14th Amendment, no matter how many years it's done, doesn't become the law. It is unconstitutional. And all people who stand for truth do what? He says, I love my people. Didn't he say that?
Yes, he said it. He
said, help me in my great missionary work to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution for the United States of America. And it ain't under the black codes. You must be what? A descendant party to those contracts in order to claim them, because they are a birthright inheritance. And that's a fact. That's why Obama tried to open the people's eyes when he made that speech, and he had the Al-Moroccan flag behind him, didn't he? Didn't he?
Yes.
And he said that Constitution for the United States come from Muslim law, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
So now that people can't say they weren't told. So if they keep on talking this civil rights vote and stuff, because it can't give you rights. They can't take it away because they never could give it to you. They're not the government. You're the government. You've been asleep. You were overthrown. Drawley brought you back into the constitutional fold. Get over it. Has nothing to do with what you believe. That's why you got to give them a record, because they think it's an emotion. They think it's a belief. They think it's a religion. No, it's the restoration of a lost estate. I gave you some of the record. It is not disputable. It's not even arguable. You're either going to be a part of it or you're not. And so the nations of the world, the nations of the earth, recognizing that we have so many traitors among ourselves, they stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds. The stuff is collapsing. And if you don't have a nationality, you have no claim. This is why when the politicians, when the cotton wigs and the conscience wigs was arguing among each other, they start opening up the borders to let people in, etc., in violation of the Naturalization Act, in order to create confusion, because they knew the economy was going to collapse because the nation stopped buying U.S. Treasury bonds. That's what's going on right now. Donald J. Trump was assigned for dissolution. This is why people don't understand what he's doing. The game is up, y'all. They have to fix it. The problem is that our people are behind when they should be taking their places among the affairs of men, enforcing the Constitution. We're doing lessons now that should have been done 50 years ago. That's what Noble Drew was saying. That's what's called the great sellout, because what I just told you is known by all adepts. Why haven't they told you this? This is not opinion. This is not belief. This is the record.
Interjection. So some of the, I wouldn't say all adepts know that, because
no. Remember, adepts is not just in the temples. In all the societies, they have adept chambers. This is what people need to understand.
Right.
Because remember, all the politicians are Masons. They have adept chambers. All the women, Congresswomen, are except the Asiatic women. They either Eastern Stars or Daughters of the American Revolution. As a matter of fact, the DAR manual is teaching citizenship. That's what Hillary Clinton was actually doing, sending signals. For those of you who don't get what I'm saying right now, go look up Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. Because remember, you need to understand government. Secretary of State deal with diversity. And you'll see 3 Moorish flags behind her and 3 amity and commerce flags, commonly known in Vixillum, which is the law of flags, as the Star-Spangled Banner, which is a trading banner. That's not the national flag, but it's right behind her. And people know what it really is, and people who have not been taught civics don't know what they're looking at. That's what the Moorish movement is for, to show you what's been before your face that the traitors haven't told you. And you got traitors on both sides. Get over it, move your egos, and get right, and let's protect the children, the next generation, sisters, and take us over 120 years to act like we know anyway. Because Noble Drew told us this stuff over and over again, and it's a disgrace that we're having to keep on having these kind of discussions. Because you should know what's going on. Because guess what? Your whole political and economic life is at stake. Because all accounts and all corporate entities belong to the popes of Rome, and they're going to be robbing all your estates. And he knew this day would come. That's why he said the nations are going to stop dealing with them. You need to understand what's going on. And people are mad at Trump. They shouldn't be mad at him. They should understand what he's doing.
Well, no one understands.
He's operating as the United States Corporation Company is being dissolved. You need to understand what's going on. The people are expecting the politicians to do something for them. They're not going to do anything for you except BS you, along with the so-called black leaders that keep on playing this 14th Amendment game with you while things crumble around you. The cure is the Moorish National and Divine Movement. I yield the floor.
It's so a few comments that I do want to make before we go into the comments. For one, Trump is, we'll never agree on Trump, because Trump is a big joker in there. He's not even enforcing the Constitution. He's causing all kinds of harm to Asiatics. And the one thing I don't want Asiatics to think about, Taj, so let me complete my thought. So the thing is, Asiatics, we're being harmed. And what I don't want Asiatics to think about is that because the people who are doing the 14th Amendment and the people who are fighting for the right to vote, which the prophet talks about in our literature, which is our right to do so, if the vote was not important and significant, the Europeans would not be doing what they're doing to keep you from voting. So I need people to really understand that there would be no reason for them. If it didn't count, it didn't matter. It would be no reason for all the things that they're doing right now to our people. It would not matter. They wouldn't have to go through such extremes to keep you from voting. That's one. Two,
yes.
Two, Trump should have never been put in office, and the people who thought they were doing themselves a favor putting him back in office are all suffering. Everybody is suffering right now because of what is going on right now. Even yesterday, he made a terrible comment that all the news media even spoke about when he said on television and talked about he loved inflation and these things. Yeah. Because the one thing about the European, they don't do anything until it affects them. when it starts affecting them, then they will start fighting. And they're not fighting for us. They're fighting for their own survival. So I need us to understand that and stop trying to assimilate into another man's world, because the prophet, listen, I will never forget when I first heard the battle of the bullet, and I will stand on this to the end of time. And so many people now, these so-called religious leaders and all that, are now trying to take pieces of the battle and bullet and trying to make it like it was them that said it. But we know that Malik El-Shabazz got it from the prophet. When they talk about the ballot and the bullet and talking about our own economic security, that we have the ones to make sure that we're economically secure. And like I had said earlier in the podcast, it doesn't matter what any of these laws, the Constitution, doesn't matter, the treaties, all of these documents don't matter when people is written down on paper. But when people who claim to be in power feel like they don't want to enforce what you're saying, they fight against you. All right, resistance, they resist you, they fight against you to put these things in order. So what we need to do is what the prophet told us in the first place, is to create our own economic security, to go back to the ways of our ancient mothers and fathers. These are things that he told us because he's a prophet. He already knew the things that we would be facing today economically, socially, religiously. He already knew these things that we're fighting for. Right now, we're fighting for. And because our rights are constantly being violated, no, rights is not something that someone can give you. These are things that are supposed to inherit. You're supposed to have these inalienable rights. But when people constantly in violation of your rights, you have to fight back when people are in violation of your rights. To sit back and do nothing, then you cannot complain out your mouth if you're not going to be on the battlefield fighting for what is your right. And if in the way that they're seeing it is that they want to put us back, and his sister said it so eloquently, like I always do. They want to see you back in shackles, where it was a point where they were telling you what to do and you would not resist them, or you would do whatever they said. So those are some of the things that's going on. Before we continue our conversation, I do want to really quickly go to the chat, Taj, and then turn the floor back over to you. I'm so much enjoying this conversation. I trust you all are enjoying it too. You know, these are conversations Taj and I be having all the time. Conversation. The only part is missing right now is our son's old enough now to join in the conversations. He's not here, but these are conversations Taj and I have back and forth, because listen,
always
the people, because we all have different thoughts about different things, but we cannot be afraid to express our thoughts, you know, to each other, because this is how communication is done.
That's important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Now,
before we give you back the floor, I just want to go to a couple of the comments in the chat. All right, so we start with Lee Bay 2334. Love, true peace, freedom, and justice. Islamism, Moors, Muslims, nobles. And he always comes in and reminds us of the prophet. So I always can remind him that Allah is not a masculine energy, but we'll go, praise Allah, supreme honors to the holy and divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali, born day on January 8th, 1886, in the state of North Carolina, 1886. He always reminds us of that is who our leader is, and I really appreciate him to do that. He does it every single time. I just appreciate him coming on the calls constantly too and support the calls. So we also have where he's the holy divine prophet. Oh, I think it would fade away. There we go. The holy divine prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Okay, yes, and he is our holy divine prophet. As we know, we give much honor to him, and he always lets us know about 1913. You know, but a lot of people have to start realizing that 1913 is when the first AK-9 temple was set up. But before then, the prophet was here in 1907. He started his mission in 1912 with the Moorish Science Temple, the Old Canaanite, but he had been here since 1907. All right, and so we want to talk about the Old Canaanite Temple. All right, so there you go. And so now we have, this is all at Lee Bay 2334. He always reminds us of what our mission is. Now, what he has to say about the 14th Amendment, he said, 14th Amendment non-federal identification document, 1857, Dred Scott slave name, the Social Security number, Social Security cards is the 1857 Dred Scott slave name, the Social Security card, administration 1935. All right, shukran for that. He's always in. You can always see in the chat. Then he has In the political affairs of denationalization, Morris branded black, so-called Negroes, and called African Americans in America the Social Security number. Again, he's talking about that. Home, residential, and stores, shops, businesses, companies, brands, facilities, factories, merchant, manufacture, supply chain, workplaces, and employment. The economic house, car, job. All right, so and let's try to get down. He does a lot of typing in the chat. All right, he talked about the Federal Reserve notes and all those things too. So, and now we have Madudi, Madudi, Islamism. He says Islam Prime Minister and all those who care about fallen humanity. Okay, he says Islam to Grand Sheik. All right, and then let's go down to all right. Moorish Americans, Muslims are 1842 Webster's Ashburton Treaty, 1846, Oregon Treaty, Canadians of Canada, Mexicans of Mexico, geopolitical geography. All right. And let's go down some more. You've been really feeding us today, Lee 2334. We appreciate you. Lady Thorough, Islam, Lady Thorough. All right, let's see. We'll go to the Add Up More 7. The prophets say we don't need the 14th or 15th Amendment for our salvation. Yes, and so I broke down what the prophet was talking about the 14th and 15th Amendment. He said if we were being treated like we're supposed to be treated, then there would be no need for it. So that's the key point that we need to understand. The prophet is letting us know if we were being treated like we're supposed to be treated, it will be no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendment. Okay, but we're not being treated that way still today. So that's what he was letting us know. All right. All right. And then let's go down, see what else we got. All right. I'm just trying to make sure we let everyone know that we are recognizing you. Demarius Marquise Bey. Peace and love, nobles. Add up the more 7 Islam. All right. Okay. We got the more 74. Okay. We appreciate you all coming in and supporting us. These conversations have to be held. All right. Islam Prime Minister and Grand Sheikh Tarik Bey, that's my duty. Rosary 2760, Islam Brother Moore, talking to you, Taj. He's saying it was ratified. So Taj explained that according to the information that he read, that it was never ratified, even though they're saying it was ratified. And I gave you the date that it said it was ratified. And so this is what we're saying. This has been an ongoing topic for 150 years. And Taj is saying there is no topic if you follow what he's saying. But the date you're talking about, I told you that what I had in my notes from what my research, because I'm a researcher. That's why I research before I have any conversation, any topic, I do my research. So it's saying that it was ratified July 9th, 1868 during the Reconstruction era following the Civil War. So that was your thought with that. Okay. Now let's go to see, it's Lee 2334, branded so-called blacks, and then he goes into black has 3 different meanings: connotation, black, belief, etymology, denotation, black, pale, law, black, civil, little more tooth. That's from Lee 334. All right, and still going down. We have Rosary 2760, the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was never ratified. Okay. All right, so he did get what you were saying. Okay. All right, so the Add Up More 7 said correct. Okay, so he was talking to him. And we got a lot of comments in here tonight. Alhamdulillah for that. Okay, so let's go down to Mr. Track Neo. He put something in here to play. I'm not going to play it. It says, since I didn't hear it before our call, we won't play that, on a broad live, because we don't know what we're playing. All right, so just so you know, it's no, we just cannot play that without, making sure what we're listening to. Okay, so shukran for sending it here though. All right, then we have Lee Bay 2334, Henry Campbell, Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, free white persons. The Naturalization Act does not mean the Caucasian race, right? We know that. Shukran. For those who do not know what he's talking about is the Europeans could call themselves Caucasians were not under that act. Okay, let's go. This one. Oh, God, this is okay. It says, read the definition for fine print. The fine print of the print of FRN notes is not a note, it's a debt. Okay, so that was from Lee 2334. All right, and then I was asking, someone said stop spamming the comment section. Okay, that's E1123KM. Okay. Then we have Cornelia Knox, 4158. No, the 14th Amendment wasn't not ratified. I don't use contractions, so I'm not trying to change your language. I just don't use contractions. All right, Umi Anna Il says 1 no, 2 no. All right, and then we have common sense. Yeah, it's to ratify is that the Black Wall Street, Tulsa Greenwich District, Oklahoma was built on and Marcus Garvey Black Star Line Islam. All right, so we got okay. So I think people are just talking a few things. I don't use so the word DAMN. Someone Rosary Reed 2760, and then someone saying the same individual saying teach. Talk about you, Taj, teach. And then they said powwow. Then William Lester says, how do I claim more? Okay, we'll get to that. And then the God is teaching the truth. All right, William Lester, or become part of this. Okay, he wants to become part of this. Okay, we'll help you with that. And then so Washington was nothing more than a diplomat. And that's Jazzy
Exactly.
1960. And so I have a lot of things about George Washington we have to stop giving him credit for, because he was a slave owner and he mistreated the people, and he literally let you know that he cut down our flag. So he said, I cannot tell a lie. Is what he was saying when we was learning in school.
Cut down the cherry tree.
Right. When I went home and told my uncle, he said, yes, he right. He cut down our flag. That's what he did. So he can't lie about it because it was seen by him. He did it in public. My uncle said so. Yeah. All right. So let me see. All right, so I'm just trying to see if we have anything else in here that we need to. Why you don't call him prophet? I'm not sure who we're not talking about calling prophet, because I always claim prophet Noble Jolly is prophet Noble Jolly, so I'm not sure. Rosie 2760, hear ye. This guy isn't a Moor. I'm not sure. I saw E1777 says this guy isn't a Moor. Not sure who they talking about. Speak truth, Taj. That came from Dark Voodoo Goddess. All right, Rosie V 2760. Hear ye. And someone knock home to you, King of Peace. All right, wouldn't he refer Trump to a liquidator? Would he refer Trump? So that question for you, Taj. Would you refer Trump as a liquidator? The famous Marty Marr. It all sounds good, but in the meantime, those Albions in maritime court don't honor contracts, treaties, or martial laws. That's what I was saying. Isn't it just keeping it? Looks what happens to me. All right, look at what happened to Abdul Bey. I'm not sure which Abdul Bey you're talking about, but you can let us know what you're referencing it to. All right, Jazzy Moore 609. Islam, the Prophet gave us the game plan on how to redirect this system for our benefit. Why are we voting for them? And I will tell you why once Taj comes off the floor. You vote because it's a power. The problem, we vote incorrectly. We must organize a block vote, BLOC vote. Okay. William yes, orange shaping iron. Okay, the brother Mario Ill Smith who has been on New York Talk podcast a few times, structured a method for these days and times along with Supreme Grand Sheik Dandruff Ill. Okay. Thanks for the engagement. All right, stop lying to the people. Vaughn Trottram Bay 3718. All right, it says, you not a prime minister and Taj not a grand sheik. He's not smarter than the prophet. They teach you not a citizen. The prophet said, we are citizens. Nasty work. So I want to address you for a moment. So Vaughn Trotman. So I am a prime minister. Your general opinion is no proof of truth. But I'm not sure. No one's saying we're not citizens. I've literally said we are a citizen. We are citizens. So I don't think, I mean, either you came in on part of the conversation, because this is real more talk. We talk. You can't came in on part of conversations, or you don't know what a citizen is, because we are citizens. So no one said we were not citizens. And how can you take away someone's title by saying Taj is not a grand sheik? What is your proof? And that I'm not a prime minister. What is your proof? Because you have no better proving in your plea than the priests have told you so, or someone else told you that. You do not know. You're simply guessing. And you have the right to your opinion, because we're on Real Morse Talk. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to address you too. All right. So I'm going to let you know. And I don't take it personal, because you have the right to your opinion. All right. And the last one says, when the Moors going to take back this land from the so-called European men, because I don't use the term white, because they're not. All right. So those were some of, we just want to let the audience know that we're engaging you. We hear what you're saying. That's what we're here for. This is Real Morse Talk. And we will go to address some of the questions you may have in the chat. But mainly what my question was I had asked you all 5 questions, and I really was looking forward to some feedback on those questions. We're going to go back to the National Grand Sheik, who is our guest today, and he's talking about the unconstitutionality of the 14th Amendment. And so he heard some of your comments, he heard the questions, and we're going to yield the floor back to him. So Grand Sheik, you are back on the floor.
Islam. Yes. And I appreciate and respect all criticism, because if you got to have a right to your mind, and we got to challenge everything, including us.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And I always say, people always claim titles, but the proof is the work that they do.
That's right.
And also, proof is also the work that they don't do.
That's right.
If you get the point. Now, for everybody, write this down, because you want to do research yourself. Because remember, we're not here to convince you. We're here to share information,
right,
so that you can challenge both us and everybody else.
That's right.
Remember, the birthright belongs to the people. It don't belong to no club, no organization, and it don't belong to nobody with a title. It belongs to the people.
That's
the
right.
issue is many people don't understand what is what. This is why I stick to geopolitics. Now, write this down, you all. Spanish Inquisition, the Secret Treaty of Verona, the Doctrine of Discovery, Christian Black Codes of 1724. All of these collectively have been used by people claiming to be government that sets up the corpse, known as the corpse person creation. And that's the nature of the operations of the 14th Amendment. Now, this is the deal. You can't be the 14th Amendment and not the 14th Amendment at the same time. Nationals do not use the 14th Amendment. The European used the 14th Amendment to set up color of law. It was never ratified, and we can't make it be ratified, etc. Now, this is the point. Also, I want you to look up this so you can understand legislation and not legislation, etc. You want to deal now. Keep this in mind. A lot of times when they talk about 1913, and you'll see them arguing about the Federal Reserve set up by the Circle Church and Chancery and the Bar Association, etc., and members of the Maltas and Odd Fellas, etc., etc., etc. 1913, what they don't tell you about is that they converted on Jekyll Island all allodial titles into mortgages and deeds. So when they just talking about what gold and silver coinage is and the Coinage Act, they're limiting what they should be telling you, because they also converted all allodial titles to mortgages and deeds in order to claim the property. And so this is what is called, they converted, etc., into a feudal law system. That's again why it's important to understand what Noble Drawley actually did to restore the Constitution. Also, pay attention to this. Write this down, y'all. House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress, in session, June the 5th of 1933. And this has much to do with those executive orders set up by Franklin Delano Roosevelt that people call a bank holiday. Well, it's more than what they've been telling you. All of this stuff is connected. So I'm giving you reference, etc. Now, also, when you look up the Clearfield Doctrine, etc., and the nature of it, you really understand that also 1913 and 1917 to 1919, when they set up the property tax that they set up, that's been taxing people on their property, was set up to fund what is known today as Israel. It is unconstitutional, was unconstitutional, and they set that up under the 16th Amendment. All of that is a fraud, and all of it is rooted in the 14th Amendment fraud. So the taxes that they've been stealing from you on your houses, talking about property tax, set up Israel. And all the votes and the control of the Congress Corporation and the Senate is run by AIPAC, i.e. Israel. And they got us going through the motion thinking that our vote count. And the real deal is, it don't mean that we can't vote, but your vote don't count because it's already, the corporation belongs to Israel. And so when you're looking at any policies made on the land through the United States Corporation Company, know that in the background, in reality, Israel owns it and runs it. Get over it. That's the truth. Don't get mad. Get wise. Every vote that we count is an exercise of emotion because Israel owns the Congress. They own the United States Corporation Company. Hold on.
And just why
hold on.
is doing that, I'm going to disagree with that because, like I said,
right here,
if that
right was here, right here, see that date?
So hard.
Right here, see that date? 25. See that date? See them numbers? Hold on. Right there. It's blurry, but there's their company, United States Company. It's not the country, it's a corporation, and it's owned by Israel. Your vote, we can vote all day long, and it don't mean we could or should or wouldn't. The point of it is, they've been exercising us under the 14th Amendment, keeping us busy, thinking that we getting something that we never got. That's why they can take it. Why? Israel owns it. Get over it. But tell the truth. It's called AIPAC. They hide behind the word lobby.
And I'm going to disagree, Taj, with that vote part.
Every congresswoman operating the United States Corporation Company have two agents for at least minimally two agents from Israel in every congressional office. Everything that is done as far as finance, as far as the wars, as far as the military complex, as far as the bankers, etc., is run by Israel. Get over it and tell the truth. Stop lying to yourself and denying the truth. In order to enforce that Constitution is the major reason why you nationalize, because that's the real plebiscite. The real vote is nationalization, i.e. the corporate entity. You can't vote in the private corporate entity because it don't belong to us. They're fronting. That's why it's de facto. That's why it never serves the people. And the people need to understand they don't answer to the people. They answer to Israel.
And I'm going to disagree with the voting portion only because of my own research and what I've done. And I do research. The bottom line is that if our vote did not count, they would not be going through all that they're doing. There's no one going to go through all that they're going through to keep us from voting.
I'm not
Redrawing districts.
I'm not condemning.
No,
I'm not saying don't take the placebo. We've been taking political placebo pills for generations. Now, this is what everybody should do. Make a record, a provable record, and show the benefits that we've been getting from anything that we've operated under the de facto corporation. Now, when you read the Clearfield Doctrine, now I'm going to go again. Here we go. I'm going to go again to the Congress. This is the floor of the Congress. This is the floor of the Congress. James Traficant Jr. He was born May the 8th, 1941, and he's a former Democratic representative in the United States Congress from Ohio from 1985 to 2002. And he represented the 17th district, etc., which centered on the areas of his hometown, young towns, etc., Ohio, etc. But this was put on the floor of Congress. And as you all know, later they neutralized him and lied and say his tractor turned over on him on a flat land on his farm. You know that's out to lunch. But this is what he presented to the Congress on the floor. This is the record. I'm going right to the record, not to emotion. United States Congressional Record, March the 17th, 1993, volume 33, page H-1303. Speaker, Representative James Traficant, representatives of the House, Representative of Ohio, addressing the House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11, and members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history. The U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act of March the 9th, 1933. 48 Statute 1, Public Law 89-719, and declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress, in session, June the 5th of 1933. Joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. All United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only under emergency war powers, with the constitutional Republican form of government now dissolved. The receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States, and this new form of government is known as a democracy. being an established socialist communist order under a new governor for America. And this act was instituted and established by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of the Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund, Public Law 94-564 on page 8, section House Resolution 13955, and it reads in part, the United States Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Gold and silver were such a powerful money during the founding of the United States with a small u, that's the republic that was overthrown, that the founding fathers declared that only gold and silver coins can be quote unquote money in America. And since the gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks, and a claim check was issued as money substitute. And people traded their coupons as money or quote unquote currency. Currency is not money, but a money substitute. Redeemable currency must promise to pay $1, and that's according to the Coinage Act, equivalent in gold and silver money. Federal Reserve notes, known as FRNs, make no such promises and are quote unquote not money. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government and are not money. The federal United States government and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver.
Interjection, Grand Sheet. Interjection.
Let me finish reading because I'm reading the record.
Interjection.
I'm reading the record. It is essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitute. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper in debt. We, the people, no longer have any money, and most Americans have not been paid any money, quote unquote, for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire lives. Now, do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now, do you understand why you are, quote unquote, bankrupt along with the rest of the country? Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Federal Reserve notes are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation, which is devaluation of the currency. And whenever there's an increase in the supply of a money substitute or quote unquote counterfeit in the economy without a corresponding increase in the gold and silver banking, inflation occurs. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank, who controls the supply and the movement of Federal Reserve notes, has everybody fooled. And they have access to an unlimited supply of Federal Reserve notes, paying only for the printing cost of what they need. Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, which are known as T-bills, a promise to pay for debt to the Federal Reserve Bank. There is a fundamental difference between paying, quote unquote, a debt and discharging, quote unquote, a debt. To pay a debt, you must pay with value or substance, i.e., gold or silver, barter, or commodity. With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt with a debt currency system. You cannot service a debt with a currency that has no backing or value in substance or of substance. And no contract in common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of quote unquote good and valuable or value consideration, etc. Unpayable debt transfers power and control to the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, no interest in law, no interest in equity, or no interest in justice because they have so much wealth already. Their lust is for power and control. And since the inception of central banking, they have controlled the fate of nations. The Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law and the principle of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers used a common law trust, quote unquote, common law trust as their model, adding stock and naming it a quote unquote joint stock trust, quote unquote. The U.S. Congress had passed a law making it illegal for any legal, quote unquote, person to duplicate a joint stock trust. In 1873, the Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to 1870, although post facto laws are strictly forbidden by the Constitution. That's Section 19.3. The Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from the federal United States government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender and or a maritime insurance underwriter of the federal United States, operating exclusively under admiralty and maritime law. The lender or underwriters bear the risk, and the maritime law compelling specific performance and paying the interest or premiums are the same. Assets of the debtor can also be hypothecated or to pledge something as a security without taking possession of it.
All right, Taj.
Yeah.
We're going to stop the record there, and I want to interject really quickly because we're past our time. And
oh yeah, Sean, but I want to mention this to everybody because they need to understand this is the congressional record.
Understood. But that's not what I hear everything that you're reading, but that's going back to my original, what I was stating is that the right to vote. And I want to come from the prophet because I want people to understand that all that you were reading has nothing to do with us with the right to vote. And I hear where people try to get frustrated with not voting. But the thing is, we have to use our mind to think. And if our vote did not matter, people have to think about this. I hear all the time, if our vote did not matter, they would not be going through.
Not that
they are going through. Guys, let me complete my thought. I'll let you have the floor.
Right.
That what they're going through, they would not go through this if our vote did not count. Now I want to come from the prophet because it's very important that we're talking about the right to vote, because people need to understand if you're not sitting back, if you're sitting back and you're talking all of this and you're complaining, but you're not getting out there doing something about it, then you're just another complainer. So I want to come from the prophet, and I'm going to start where he says, I, the prophet. I want to start there because I don't want anything lost in translation. And the producer is giving me that we have to wrap it up. I, the prophet, was prepared by the great God Allah to warn my people to repent from the sinful ways and go back to the state of mind to their forefathers and foremothers' divine and national principles, that they will be law abiders and receive their divine rights as citizens, according to the free national constitution that was prepared for all free national beings. They are to claim their own free national name and religion. There is but one issue for them to recognize by this government and of the earth, and it comes only through the connection of the Moorish divine and national movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all other nations of the world. And through it, they and their children can receive their divine rights unmolested by other citizens that they can cast a free national ballot at the polls under the free national constitution of the state's government and not under a granted privilege as has been the existing condition for many generations.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Let me finish my thought. And so what I am saying is that I hear all of what everyone's saying and what you're saying. The bottom line is I'm telling you, and we need to start thinking and be very observant. Anytime anything that affects the Europeans is when they take, and that's when they go in. And they have gone in and redrawn districts and everything for those who are following, because even they're bringing in Europeans from South Africa,
which they have a right to do. That's their corporation.
I'm going to finish my thought. The Europeans are from South Africa because they don't have enough Europeans here. They are trying to keep the people that are here from the right to vote. And because, listen, it is your constitutional right. If we want to talk about the Constitution, it is your constitutional right to vote in your best interest. And when they start doing things like redistricting and stopping you from voting and cutting the voting right, and I don't care if it was cut under the 14th, 15th, 16th Amendment. It doesn't matter. What they're taking away are things that prophet said was a granted privilege. They're trying to turn a right into a privilege and taking that away from the people. And so because of that, if you sit back and don't do anything, I see people comment in the chat, oh, Moors don't vote. That's a falsehood. The prophet told us that we're supposed to cast our ballots at the polls. So that is an untruth when people are saying that. The bottom line is you have to vote in your best interest.
Now, let's clarify, because it's very clear what the prophet said.
Yes.
Now, what is not clear to the people, he's talking about the vote under the Constitution, the original free national Constitution, which was undermined. This is what must be understood.
Gosh,
vote.
I'm an interject. It doesn't matter. The people, what you're saying has nothing to do with.
It does. It has everything to do with it.
No. Okay. So the people.
Let me finish. I'm explaining my position.
Understood.
That their vote, they must know the difference between the de facto order of the corporation that has been fronting as the government, which is not the government, which is what they've been playing with the people with.
But guys, what you're saying is what I wanted people to clearly understand, and we have to start.
They must understand. They must vote under the Constitution
and do nothing, because if this was in fact the case, they would not be fighting so hard to keep us from casting a ballot. And so because you see them fighting to keep us doing that, whether electoral college, they can't even get the electoral college numbers without people going to the polls.
They're playing the people. They're playing the people.
I don't think that people would go through what they're going through to play the people. They're not going to go through the extent of what they're doing with redistricting and etc. They're not going to do that if your vote does not count. And I'm going to stand on that. I'm going to go ahead and stand on that. And I'm going to let you close out with your thought, because you are a guest today. I'm going to go ahead and let you.
What you're missing that I'm saying is that they must know the jurisdiction is the issue. They must understand that the system has been hypothecated. Now,
and I just need people to understand, if you look at what's going on.
To what I'm saying, I'm not disagreeing with your intent. I'm not disagreeing with your intent. Exactly what the prophet said. He said the vote under the Constitution. The Constitution has been subverted by the people who are fronting. That must be understood. It's not the issue of not voting. That's not the argument. The issue is that they put the 14th Amendment in place, making the people thinking that they're operating under a constitutional venue when they hypothecated it. This is why we get no benefit. This is why people need to understand jurisdiction.
Got
It's
you.
not the
We're
issue.
gonna have to finish this topic at another time. The producer is like going crazy. All right, so this has been a real good conversation, and we want to thank our guest speaker for being here today, our National Grand Chief Tarik Bey. We go into what you all see right here is what we do on a regular basis here, and everyone has the right to their opinion and thoughts, and so we do respect that here at Real More Talk. And you know, you've been on episode of Shadow Hour, Real Morse Talk live here, and we're a little bit over our time, but we just want to thank everyone for coming out. Listen, to support us, I do have to go to our support. Is that you want to support our online schooling? Go to donate $ online schooling MC. We need your support to support our school. Also, our humanitarian organization, Daughters of Drew Ali. We want to continue to send Thea out there because with the Daughters of Drew Ali, Taj can tell you we took really good care of him with that. So we need to keep that humanitarian organization going with that. All right. And we also want you to know that you can purchase books at circle7publishing.com. And that book that we were talking about today is available for you. I have to, Shamsuddin will post it up there on the site so you all can order that book. But the donation for that book is $10. We need your support to constantly do what we're doing today. And also, if you don't have Cash App or PayPal or any of those, you can go to donate more science with GSK at DurriyyahBey.com. You can certainly go there and donate as well. All right, so we want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Also, always for Shadow Hour on Real Morse Talk. Thank you so much. We want to give a really big thank you again to our guest, National Grand Chief Tarik Bey, for coming out because, you know, we know how busy his schedule is. But he came out to make sure he could support us today with that. And he wanted to talk about this particular issue. And so we just wanted to make sure we gave him the opportunity to do so. All right. All right, then. All right. So National Grand Chief, there you are. So I just wanted to say again, you know, thank you all. I'm sure the people enjoyed this because the numbers started going crazy. And of course, having National Grand
That's
Chief.
good. Yeah. That means they're thinking.
Right, on the line together, you know, because I want people to know that me and Ty don't agree on every single thing. We have our difference of opinion, and that's what it is. We have our differences, we have our different styles, but at the end of the day, our main goal is the uplifting of fallen humanity.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's what
I want to qualify. What I read to you is not my opinion. That's the congressional record.
Okay.
The issue is they need to understand that the Republic was hypothecated in 1913. It is. I support everything that you're saying, Prime Minister. But the prophet is his argument is that our vote must be under the Constitution, not under the de facto. People need to understand the corporation is not the government.
Got you, Ty.
That's why people are confused. They don't understand jurisdiction.
All right, and we have to continue to have this conversation again another time. And like I'm saying, I wasn't speaking about that particular record you were speaking from.
A constitutional vote is not the corporation vote. They're two different platforms.
So I'm going to say in leaving with Morris, please do not vote, because if you keep sitting back, not doing nothing, the conditions that you're in is already bad.
We're doing something now because it's controversy, isn't it? So they got to think, don't
I don't think it's controversy. I think
they got to think. Hey, this is the fight. This is the fight. Because we got to clean it. Isn't it our job to clean it up?
We have to have this conversation.
That's right.
Have to have these conversations.
That's why I wasn't dealing with no opinion. I was dealing with the congressional record.
All right.
Absolutely. Because that bypasses opinion. It ain't personal.
All right. So I want to say more is until next Thursday. Next Thursday is going to be a really good subject next Thursday because I'm talking about Juneteenth. And some wars are so ridiculous on the things they're saying about Juneteenth. You all are so confused that you have to know the valid information about something, and that way you can teach your children correctly. So that's what we do here at Real More Talk. So until next week, yours, or until next time, yours, I want you to take care of yourselves and each other.
Islam.
Shadow Hour, Real More Talk, Morris. Stay safe. Islamism.
Read Act 1 of the Divine Warning. Of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws, and then read the divine warning by the prophet for the nations, and also read Act 1. You see what the people in authority were put in power to do. So they're supposed to do what? Cast their vote under the Constitution, not under the corporation.
I said, made it so clear. If I don't, and it's time to keep going. All right. Peace and love, Morris. Peace.